Welcome to Consciousness, the DSR Network podcast focusing on the artificial intelligence revolution, politics, and policy.
This podcast is underwritten in part by the U.S. Embassy of the United Arab Emirates. Its editorial content is completely independent, and the views expressed are exclusively those of participating experts. It is presented live, without editing. For further information about the UAE's efforts in the areas of artificial intelligence and technology, go to the website of the embassy at www.uae-embassy.org and search for UAE-US Tech Cooperation. We thank them for their support. We thank everybody who's supporting this podcast for their support, and we look forward to it developing and growing over time because the issue is so important. Hello and welcome to Consciousness, one of the web's most popular podcasts on AI, and I'm your host, David Rothkopf. I am extremely glad that today we've got one of the leading thinkers on all things technological for a long time, one of the most creative minds I know out there. Vivek Wadhwa is a best-selling author based in Silicon Valley and researches, speaks, and writes about advancing technologies transforming our world. He currently serves as the CEO of Vionix Biosciences, and I would add that can it be 13 years ago? 13 years ago, when I took over as CEO and editor at Foreign Policy, we named leading global thinkers, and in 2012, Vivek was one of the leading global thinkers. So it was my first year there, and I feel like we made a good choice. So welcome, Vivek.
David, the honor is mine. I mean, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and it's great to be talking to you in person again.
Well, likewise. So, what I want to do is dive into a couple of the recent things that I've seen of yours that you've written. You're very prolific, and so don't hesitate to weave in other things you've written. But I want to start. I mean, we're a podcast that talks about AI in a variety of different perspectives: the technology, public policy, misconceptions, visions, and so forth. And so I'm just going to pick two of these articles out. But you did one in October, I guess, in which you talked about how the next wave of AI won't be driven by LLMs, and you talked about what investors should focus on instead. And I thought it was quite eye-opening and unconventional, which is, of course, why we turned to you. So maybe we could start with that one.
Yeah. So right now, Silicon Valley's hype machine is focusing on ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Bard and the associated LLM-based technologies. This is just one of the S curves. You got to, AI is advancing exponentially. Now, what people don't understand is that in exponential advances, there's a series of S curves. You have one technology that goes up and then reaches a peak. Another one comes and replaces it. This is the way all technologies go. We get very excited about these, and then the technology plateaus and we become disappointed. Where we are right now is at the beginning of the disappointment phase for the Chat GPTs and LLMs. Chat GPT itself, if you read about the Chinese competitors coming there, it's going to be eclipsed. And throwing another $10-20 billion at it is going to be a complete waste because the next generation of technologies are right behind this thing, and they're going to replace it. So that is what's happening with AI. It's amazing. It's scary as hell, and it's happening exponentially. That's the message I tried to convey in that article. Don't bet on today's S curve, which is these LLMs and the existing technologies. Look forward. Look at the general trend.
And one of the things that you talk about in terms of looking forward is neurosymbolic AI. Could you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, that you say, rather than getting technical into one technology, it's one of the next technologies that's on the horizon. A completely different way of looking at AI. AI started when scientists were trying to mimic the human brain. They looked at the human brain and they said, look, there are neurons that are interconnected to each other. And what happens is that as we build memories, as we have experiences, the weights on those neurons increase or decrease. So that was the basis of AI. Now, this goes back 20 years or so, and because there was a previous generation of AI, like, we used to read about, what was that? IBM Watson defeating chess players. That AI was simply if-then-else instructions. So scientists were talking about an AI that was like the human brain, in which you had all these interconnected pieces, the weights would shift and so on. The trouble was to build this type of AI, you needed massively parallel processors, and we didn't have those. And then what happened? NVIDIA came along to cater to the gamers. Really, literally, you remember Frank Wolfenstein and Miss Pac-Man, all those games you and I used to play when we were so old. I mean, for for enabling us to be able to experience those games, they needed faster processors. They needed different processors, so they developed massively parallel processors, the GPU. And then the AI people looked at it and said, "Oh my God, this is a massively parallel computer. We can build AI on it." So that's where it came from. And this is why NVIDIA is now a $1 trillion company, because they were the pioneer of the core technologies behind it. So today we have, these LLMs, which are based on, really literally recognizing text and predicting patterns forward. And then there are a bunch of, neurosymbolic is just one thing which I threw out there. There are, dozens of other research projects happening in universities all across the world in which they're looking at completely different ways of connecting the pieces together and mimicking the power of the human brain. So what I tried to explain was that, look, this current generation is now at its peak. Throwing more money at it, you're going to lose everything you have. Sit back, look at the trend. There'll be many new things coming along. Let's bet on those. Now, beyond that, David, for your viewers, because I know you've been focusing on AI. My advice to you is to look beyond AI now. AI is like electricity; it's an enabling technology. AI is going to make a lot of scary things possible. We keep talking about AGI. We are nowhere near AGI. These are brain dead technologies. So, it comes to mimicking the human brain. These are simply, probability machines and putting, bits and pieces together. We are nowhere near the intelligence required to mimic humanity. However, okay, what the power of these technologies is amazing. And if we have time, I'd love to tell you about what I'm doing, because I came out of retirement. I was literally, I don't know how old you are, but I'm now 67. All right. So when I was 65, I decided to become an entrepreneur again and change the world because of what AI made possible. So amazing things. But the things we have to worry about aren't AGI. That's simply, Sam Altman, trying to get his market value up and putting out bullshit completely. The opportunity over here, the risk over here is AI being applied to other things. All right. So, robots, just Google Unitree, the Unitree robots. The humanoid robots they have there are scary good. They've exceeded Boston Dynamics. The Boston Dynamics won't, but they've been trying to build this generation of, humanoid robots. The Chinese now can do it for 20 years of the price. And those robots are darn good, except they lack the intelligence. Now, when you add AI to them, you now get scary things happening. Because those robots, imagine a $20,000 robot that's in your home in the next 3 years or so is what I'm talking about. And not even 5 years. My guess in the next 3 to 5 years, let's say, you can buy a robot on Amazon for $20,000. The robot can come and wash your dishes. It can sit by you and chat with you. It can, do regular household chores. It's your friend and companion. Those robots are coming. What's it going to be powered by? Where does the intelligence come from? AI. Right. Now, you've seen how defective ChatGPT is, that it hallucinates. Also, hackers, even professors in universities have been able to break the guardrails around ChatGPT. So you could tell it to give you a recipe for a nuclear bomb or how to develop a Molotov cocktail so you can go and bomb your whatever. I mean, all of these workarounds are commonly available. The jailbreaks, as they call them, which removes all the limits that these companies have tried to place on it. Now, get back to the home robot. Okay, you're running using AI. The robot is programmed to keep you happy. You're having a fight with your spouse, and that happens to be your robot, and the spouse slaps you or hits you or swears at you, and the robot is programmed to defend you, because those robots will also be programmed to defend us, because we'll simply have add-ons to it. We say if an intruder comes and tries to harm you, protect you, right? So now that a robot decides to kill your spouse, who's guilty? Who's responsible? This is exactly what the problem we have with today's AI technologies. Because they're not truly intelligent, they can do crazy things. And then hackers can, why am I saying hackers? It's anyone. Can work. Because I tried to jailbreak myself. I read about it. I said, let's see if I can do it. And voila, it worked. So anyone can now get around the guardrails on these technologies. So we're moving too fast with this stuff. And it's scary what's going to become possible in the next few years or so. That is what we have to worry about. And then, yesterday we had OpenAI announce this new agent that can, control your browser for you. So now, when you're trying to do something online, you do one thing at a time. Your chatbot can have unlimited browsers. So it could be taking over the internet, literally. Just this technology that was released yesterday, all sorts of crazy things. I mean, trying different combinations, hacking websites, hacking into the government, nuclear codes, God knows the craziness that's already possible with this technology. And there are no guardrails on it. Because OpenAI was in such a rush to get the stuff out, they didn't put any checks and balances on it. And now with, Altman and, Silicon Valley now, owning government, because they're now guiding government, they're going to create policies that insulate them from any of the harms. Just like was Section 290, what was that section which gave these social media companies protection from being sued? The AI companies are going to have protections of being sued. So it's like, imagine a car, okay? Automotive manufacturer, Ford, GM, whatever, releasing a car without brakes, or releasing a car in which the brakes go bad after a few weeks of use. Those companies would worry about lawsuits, and they wouldn't do it. This is why they spend so much time perfecting their technologies. With AI and the Silicon Valley companies, there are no checks and balances, and they're going to defend themselves. They're going to basically get the government to absolve them from any liability from these lawsuits, which means that they can irresponsibly release technologies which are dangerous, with which you could do crazy things. And this is happening as we speak. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the great things about talking to you and reading your books is that, every phrase leads me to want to ask 10 questions. Of course, in the limited time of the podcast, that's maybe not a great thing, because I could go in 100 directions here. But let me just pick up on where you ended up. And I don't mean to get political here. Clearly, with the development of AI, we're getting to a point where questions of regulation and the guardrails that are set up by the government are going to be more important in the next 4 years than they were in the last 4 years. Yeah. So no matter who was elected, this was going to be a bigger issue. We have this interesting phenomenon of an administration that appears to be very close to a lot of people from Silicon Valley, and appears to be now, and by the way, those people have different views on AI, but it appears to be very close to a lot of them. And big questions, ethical questions, legal questions, moral questions, like the ones you're raising here, are going to come up. How do you think this newly close relationship between some powerful folks on Silicon Valley and the government at this juncture in time are likely to play out?
David, I'm worried. I mean, it's like with technology, good and evil at the same time. So now the good, which I wrote a piece about immigration and H-1Bs and Indian Americans and so on. So the good of having Elon Musk being so close to Trump is that he's already convinced him that skilled immigrant visas are good. Okay, so the good is that they're going to now very likely solve the problem of immigrant visas and so on. The bad is that they're going to protect their investments. They're going to now give the tech companies the shield that they want, just like they had for social media. I forgot what that statue was. You may remember it, but we debated it a lot
Yeah,
about the protection that social media companies have from lawsuits. They're going to give the AI companies the same protections. And that is deadly because these companies are in it for profit. It's money, 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 money. Sam Altman is, I mean, Elon Musk, I've known him for, Elon and I have had differences. We've had a love-hate relationship. I used to call him a friend. And then I started attacking him. And now I'm in between because he's saying the right things about immigration. But Elon Musk still cares for humanity. He has a soul, despite everything. You know, it may not seem that way every day, but Elon Musk does want to do good for the world. I'm not convinced that Sam Altman has the same values. All right. So now when you see Sam Altman up there with Larry Ellison, with Trump talking about $500 billion coming from Saudi Arabia and God knows where else for AI, I don't trust these people because it's all money, money, money for them. And so what they're going to do is that they're going to say, hey, China is going, doing all of these things. Therefore, for national defense, we need to do the same. And we're going to advance and build a technology which has zero guardrails. And what's more, they're going to insulate themselves from the liability of releasing a car without brakes. So that car crashes into people, kills the occupants and whatever. They're going to say it wasn't our fault. It's someone else's fault. It's the driver's fault. God knows who they're going to blame for it. It's not going to be them. That is what worries me about having Silicon Valley being so close to Trump.
Yeah. By the way, I thought it was Section 230, and it is Section 230.
It is Section 230. That's right. Yeah.
Right, of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, which got almost everything wrong. I was in the Clinton administration. I'll take my share of blame for what it got wrong, but it does bring us, to this point. And I think if somebody were just listening, they would say, well, you're a skeptic. You're not a skeptic. And I was struck by this piece that I saw in a publication that I didn't know called Monify.
It's a brand new publication.
Yeah. But you talk about why Sam Altman's AGI reflections could lead to peril or progress. And you cover the progress too. You talk about the upside in a very positive way, right? You say it's kind of a fork in the road moment, right?
Exactly. My book, Driving the Driverless Car, I wrote version 1 of it in 2016. I talked about all the things that are happening right now. The AI, the fork in the road, how we're going to now have to decide about everything from killer robots to drones. I talked about the drone. I wrote a series of articles for the Washington Post about the danger from drones, how they're going to be used for warfare. And then you combine them with AI and all these dangers. The book is still relevant today. You could read it today and say, oh my God, these things are correct. So I've been talking about this longer than other people have, but at the end of the day, the book is optimistic. It says we have two choices, either the amazing future of Star Trek or the dystopia of Mad Max. And I concluded that, humanity has always risen above its challenges. We've always had difficult decisions to make. We've always, feared the end of, humanity, but we've got it right. So I'm optimistic we'll get it right. But I tell you, I lose sleep at night sometimes when I see the craziness that's happening out there. So we still could end up in the dystopia of Mad Max sooner than we expect.
Yeah, well, we don't, we won't always get it right. And, you could just imagine, somebody at ICE today saying, oh yeah, robots, good idea. That'll help us round up these people. And let's set these parameters for these law enforcement robots.
David, it's happening. Andrew, Palmer Lucky's company, all right? They already have these drones and defense systems. I mean, all they have to do is add some weapons to it, and they can start shooting the people. They'll say we're just going to scare them away, but they could start killing people autonomously if they wanted to. That's already happening.
And also, we've talked about on other of our podcasts here. There are other less visible, equally pernicious potential applications, such as criminal sentencing, where you can have AI making certain judgments that affect many, many people's lives, but they don't do it. if you take a step back, another thing I was thinking about while you were talking is that the technical term in my part of New Jersey where I grew up for what I'm about to talk about is chutzpah, where you say, well, this is mimicking the human brain. To say that at a moment where we don't actually understand how the human brain works is chutzpah, right?
Exactly.
There are some things in the human brain, though, that we do know how they work, and they don't figure in this because you have logical, rational processes, but there's some things in the human brain that don't work along those. There's a center of the brain, for example, in all of us for, hundreds of thousands of years that is for processing music and musical sounds. And we don't know how that works with the rest of the brain, right? And so essentially what we're saying is, this is mimicking the brain, of which we understand a fraction of 1%. And that's why I say it's chutzpah. By the way, when I say my part of New Jersey, my dad worked at Bell Labs, and I grew up at Bell Labs, and I was there in my very first jobs in the 1970s. I was working there with people who were developing latent semantic indexing, which led to LLMs. And it was the same kind of mathematically driven, logical algorithms that have nothing to do with the human brain at all. So, I see the gap. The gap has not closed a lot in that respect. Do you think I'm wrong, or?
No, I have a deeper perspective here. That this is, Ray Kurzweil, who Singularity is near, he's been talking about the singularity and so on and so on. He and I have always disagreed on one element. That yes, computing may advance to the point it seems like magic, it seems human, but we have something which computers can never have, which is a soul, right? I'm not very religious, but still I'm spiritual. So I believe that there's more to us than just our physical bodies and our physical brains. It's that soul that, goes from lifetime to lifetime or goes to heaven, whatever it might be. And that is the driving force behind us. And that's what differentiates us. And then we have karma. We do positive things. We get rewards for it. And that's my belief system. That is missing from this, computational system. The computers will never have that. And it's that soul, it's that ethical value that we have in us that prevents us from doing harmful things. That even though it may make logical sense to kill someone, I'm just using a bad example. Our ethical and moral values prevent us from doing it. Even though we can do bad, we can do evil, we don't do it because of that regulator we have, which is a soul. So that's the way I would describe what you just said.
Yeah, no, and you describe it better than the way I described it. But you also characterize AI as kind of the beginning of this process,
Yes.
and the way I've characterized it in a year of doing this show and writing stuff and so forth is that AI is not vertical, it's horizontal. It changes everything. It's like the Industrial Revolution, and it changes everything in different kinds of ways. One of the ways, though, it changes everything. We're sitting here talking about, can answer this question, and I'm going to come up with the harder question, and that's going to make it. Quite apart from all of that stuff, I'm worried about sort of the qualitative effects of AI. So, and I'm very positive on AI. But for example, it accelerates everything. The more tools you have like this, the faster change occurs in a world which is ill-equipped to keep up with those changes in schools, among policymakers, in regulators, among law enforcement officials, among economists. Economists can't build models for the systems that we're about to enter because everything is moving more quickly than they're capable of adjusting. So it's apart from all the discussions of LLMs and other kinds of things, and how it affects us creates another set of challenges.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like I said, it's good and evil at the same time. So because I'm seeing a lot of good things coming from it, but the ability to analyze data, we're beginning to understand the climate. We're beginning to understand how cities function. We're beginning to understand, the genome. We're beginning to now. Larry Ellison made a statement about being able to to find cures, to develop mRNA-based vaccines for cancer. That created a controversy. They were, even on Twitter, I had a bunch. I took apart an oncologist, a doctor, who said this is complete bogus and never happened. He's wrong. The fact is, with the data we're gathering right now, we can now understand exactly the correlation between lifestyle habits and our genome, and then disease itself. So we will be able to create personalized vaccines for cancer and find cures for every disease. My own company, Vionix, I literally came out of retirement because I said, I can do what Elizabeth Holmes promised she would do. It was a complete 100% fraud. But the concept of being able to test for hundreds of diseases at the same time with a drop of blood, well, I want a vial of blood, not a drop of blood, but the technology that I already have working now using AI, we can recognize every disease at the same time from a small from a small sample by using traditional techniques of mass spectrometry, but now adding AI to it. So it was all made possible by AI. Couldn't have imagined doing this before. And I believe in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm going to disrupt the entire medical diagnostics industry because I used AI in a new way with previous techniques for analyzing biological samples.
Well, it brings up another interesting question and a subject we return to, because we're coming with varying, models of how to deal with this. And the Europeans have a model, the Americans have a model, the Chinese have a model. And here in the United States, we go, well, we have big advantages over the Chinese because we are entrepreneurial and creative, and they're not. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit in that. But also, there are things we're willing to do, and there are things we are not willing to do, and so they benefit some things and not others. And this goes again against this unitary idea. So, for example, if you have an open society, you may have a much easier time creating systems that harvest all the data out there on the news and stuff and give you a good analysis, because you're not going to weed out the stuff that's unpleasant to your government, like the Chinese might. On the other hand, in China, they have the Beijing Genome Institute, and they're going to say, we're going to collect 100 million DNA samples.
They've already done it. They've already stolen everything they could. I mean, you're talking about they probably have 1 billion by now.
Well, okay, but so it's up to, but the point is, their view is all that data they own, and they're going to build bigger data models with more correlations, and so they're going to have an advantage. We may not like the system that led to it, but in terms of the kind of thing you're talking about, a lot of it's correlative, right? And particularly when it comes to diseases where they're very small samples, having a sample of 1 billion is a huge advantage over having a sample of 10 million, right?
Yeah, exactly. And David, the reason why I moved my R&D for my company Vionix from Silicon Valley to India was because I can get access to all the data and the biosamples I need there. Literally, because to train my AI for, the way it works is that you have to train the AI on every disease. You have to have it look at the patterns and so on. So I need to get thousands of samples of every disease I'm looking at. Imagine trying to do that in the United States. The lawyers and the universities and all, the regulators and so on, HIPAA, there's no way I could get more than 30, 40, 50, 100 samples or so to be able to train my AI. Impossible in the United States. In India, it's easy as hell. I mean, working within Indian data regulations, I can get access to tens of thousands of samples of every disease I need and train my AI to the point that it's 99.9% accurate. I couldn't imagine doing that in the United States. China, with the government having full control, they don't even have the checks and balances that they have in India. So it's a free for all. I'm sorry, it's not a free for all. Free for the government to do whatever it wants to do.
Yeah, and things like orphan diseases, where there's 32 examples a year in the world, you won't be able to help anybody unless you have massively large databases, right?
Exactly. China has them. India has them. Now, China, like I said, my fear is that they're now genetically modifying human beings to create super soldiers. That they've been able to steal a lot of genetic information from all over the world. It's not 1 billion, maybe it's 100 million data points that they have, and so on. That they have access to massive troves of data and without any ethical regulations. They were, with CRISPR, you already had the gene edited babies coming out of China. They pretended to get upset when the scientists did it, but they're already experimenting with animals and people and God knows what else. So now, given all of that and given AI, there's a lot to worry about. I
Yeah.
don't know what else to say.
No,
I'm
no.
positive and scared at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's the defining characteristic of this era, right? We're going into something where there's immense possibilities, where enormous change is definitely going to come, and where some of it can be good and some of it bad. I haven't even gotten into. I mean, my background in the government and most of my career is looking at sort of international consequences, particularly of economic things, and I see AI has got real possibilities for lifting up the bottom, but also for exacerbating inequality
Yeah.
because a lot of it's very expensive, requires certain kinds of know-how, technology, and so forth. And so the richest guy is going to have access to the best AI to make the best judgments about a market so that he can stay 5 minutes ahead of the next guy. And that's all you need in order to make all the money.
Yeah.
And so this could take some of our deepest problems of social inequality within societies, but also between societies, because most of the global south is like, hey, where are we in all of this? And so that to me is another worry, not just killer robots, but that.
David, the interesting thing right now is that the rest of the world has access to the same technology we do. So China now with OpenSeek, rivaling ChatGPT, open source, they showed that for 1/50th of the cost, they could do wonderful things. India is doing the same. You have developers, AI experts, engineers, scientists all over the country doing amazing things. So there's more equality than we would expect because the cost of doing all of this is almost zero now, and the fact that the technologies are democratized. So, but nevertheless, there are risks over here. That if it was only the USA that was building these AI tools, you would bet that OpenAI would charge not $200, $2,000 a month, $20,000 a month. That would be just for the rich. But this is the good thing is that it's the good thing and the bad thing is that it's democratizing at the same time. So again, unexpected, unpredictable outcomes.
Yeah, and also, by the way, just as an aside, there, it's led to some really dubious policy judgments. The U.S. has this policy of small yard, high fence, or at least did in the last administration, because we want to keep all these good technologies away from China, and so we maintain our edge. But as you say, we can't actually do that. It's a fool's errand. And even, I've talked to some people in the U.S. government, they say, well, what the Chinese have developed is only 80% as good as what we've developed. Then I've talked to people in places, Brazil or Africa, and they say 80% is fine. Mm-hmm. I'll take 80% at a 20th of the price with no restrictions, and I'll get someplace good with that, right?
Exactly.
So, this, by the way, goes to another issue, which is we don't train our, you go to, I did a study on this once, go to all the schools of public policy in the United States and ask how many require to take a course in this technology. And the answer is 0 require it. A couple offer it. But if, and it affects all, as we say, it's horizontal. So it affects every area of policy. It's going to change every area of policymaking. And we have legislators and policymakers and political leaders, none of whom actually understand what's going on.
No, they have no clue. But that's the way it always is with advancing technologies, that the policymakers are the most clueless. So
it's true. But we had in the Industrial Revolution, we had 200 years to catch up.
Yeah.
And here we have months, couple of years. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different thing. Look, I love this, and I hope we can invite you back because there's so much more to talk about. But I hope everybody keeps following what you're writing. I'm personally going to take a good close look at your company. We're doing a lot of work in my company on AI and healthcare and public health and global differences. And
David, I'm going to disrupt the entire industry. And a decision I made In my book, Driving the Driverless Car, I said there are three choices to be made to get us to Star Trek. Number one, do the rewards outweigh the risks? Does it create autonomy or dependence? And the third one is, are we going to be able to distribute this equally? Because if only the rich have it, then the poor kill the rich, and so on. So what I decided with Vionix was that not only am I doing my R&D in India now, I'm rolling it out in India first. I'm going to make it available to the poorest of the poor first. I want to be able to do a comprehensive medical test for them with urine or with blood for 100 rupees, which is $1.20. All right. Zero profit. I don't care about profit. I don't need $1 billion in the bank. I have enough. I mean, I'm comfortable. So this is all for humanity, and I'm going to make it available to the poor before the rich. So if things go the way I hope, in 2026, I'm going to be providing medical diagnostics to the poorest of the poor in India, which are better than you get here in America. That is what is possible now.
Well, being better than the U.S. healthcare system is setting the bar pretty low. But I get your point, and clearly the difference between Star Wars vision and the Mad Max vision is that one involves morality and is distinguished by that, and the other one is distinguished by its absence of morality.
Yes.
And so, how do we work that in is critical, and it's inspiring to hear how you're doing it. And again, I hope we can invite you back. And folks, now you understand. Go read what Vivek is writing, and come back and join us again each and every week here on Consciousness. And starting next month on our AI, energy and climate podcast, as we start building out this family of podcasts in this area. Until then, thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, my friend.